Season 5, Episode 25. Black History Moments is a podcast dedicated to telling the stories of those who have been forgotten or lesser known in our history. But this episode is a little bit different, and by a little, I mean a lot. Typically, we gear the episodes towards individuals that have a history we may not have been familiar with, but this year, 2025, I wanted to do something that shined a light on educational institutions. Historically, Black colleges and universities have been a part of the lifeblood of the Black community for generations. And I have such a strong appreciation for them. And to show that appreciation, this Black History Month, I'm selecting 4 schools to cover. And it's only right that I kick this off with my alma mater, the school that has truly shaped me from the moment that I stepped into this world, Florida A&M University, otherwise known as FAMU. Founded in 1887 and sitting atop a hill that was once a slave plantation, the institution of higher learning has a rich history that goes beyond its renowned Marching 100. This is the story of FAMU. Thomas V. Gibbs was a Black man born September 16, 1855 in New York City. He was the only son born to his parents and went on to West Point, which is a military academy for the United States. So a few years pass and Thomas Gibbs finds his way down to Florida. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of information out there on Thomas's life prior to this. Honestly, there's not much on his life, period, but this is what I was able to find. Thomas graduates from West Point and goes down to Florida to become an educator and eventually a school administrator in Duval County. So for anyone unfamiliar with the Florida landscape, Duval County is the area that Jacksonville is located in. So think eastern Florida. In 1884, Thomas Gibbs was elected to the Florida legislature. Now, you may be wondering, how could a Black man serve in the Florida legislature in 1884 when there was segregation? Well, there was a law that barred segregation of public facilities in 1873, 11 years before Thomas Gibbs entered the legislature. However, in 1885, the law was overturned and segregation was back in full effect. As a result of this, Thomas's political career was short-lived. However, a lot can happen in a year. Before Thomas lost his spot in the Florida legislature, he orchestrated the passage of House Bill 133 back when he joined the legislature in 1884. This bill was to establish 2 schools. One would be a white normal school in Gainesville, and the other school was to be an African-American school in Jacksonville, Florida. The bill passes and creates both institutions. However, the state decided to relocate the school for Blacks to Tallahassee instead of Jacksonville. Now, instead of East Florida, how we're thinking about Duval County and Jacksonville, now in your mind, if you're not familiar with the landscape of Florida where Tallahassee is, think more West Florida. After the bill's passage, FAMU, which was at the time named the State Normal College for Colored Students, was founded on October 3rd, 1887. The school began classes with 15 students and 2 instructors. Thomas DeSalle Tucker, an attorney in Pensacola, Florida, was chosen to be the school's first president. Now, interestingly enough, Mr. Tucker was originally from Sierra Leone in Africa. He'd been brought to the Americas at the age of 12 for his studies. His mother was the daughter of Chief Harry Tucker, and back in Sierra Leone, the Tuckers were a prominent clan of slave traders. Now, I found this quite interesting that the son of slave traders went on to be the president of a school that was created to educate descendants of the slave trade. Here we have his family that helped capture people and ship them to the Americas. And then years later, a member of the family becomes a pivotal figure in helping the advancement of those people. And I can't help but wonder if he felt a sense of responsibility to Black Americans because of what he witnessed back home in Sierra Leone. But I guess we'll never know. So let's backtrack. Thomas Tucker received his law degree from Dillard University and then moved to Pensacola, Florida to practice law as an attorney. And being that Thomas Tucker was brought to the Americas to study and then return home, his family was very disappointed in him when he didn't return back to Sierra Leone after his educational pursuits. He explained that his family connections back home would present trials and temptations that would make it impossible for him to live the life of a Christian. That said, Thomas Tucker was the first president of FAMU, or at this time, the State Normal College for Colored Students. And having lost his position in the legislature, Thomas Gibbs, who ushered in that House bill that established the school, joined Thomas Tucker as the second faculty member. So it was Thomas and Thomas, Tucker and Gibbs. In 1891, the college received $7,500 under the Second Morrill Act for agriculture and mechanical arts education. Now, in today's dollars, $7,500 is equal to a little over $260,000 today. The State Normal College for Colored Students then became Florida's land-grant institution for African Americans, and the school's name was changed to the State Normal and Industrial College for Colored Students. Now, in addition to a name change, FAMU had to move, or the State Normal College had to move. The land that it did occupy is where Florida State University currently sits today, but the school had to relocate to an area on the south side of Tallahassee where Highwood Plantation once stood. Highwood Plantation was once owned by William Pope Duval, who was the territorial governor from 1822 to 1834. And that land where Highwood Plantation sat was infested with rattlesnakes, which is one of the reasons that the school was moved to this land. Since the grounds were a former plantation and people didn't want to deal with the snake infestation, there was no protest about the black school being moved to the property. This is how FAMU arrived at its mascot, the rattler, or the rattlesnake. After some settling in 1905, the management of the college was transferred from the Board of Education to the Board of Control, and this officially designated the college as an institution of higher education. In 1909, the name was changed from the State Normal College for Colored Students to Florida Agricultural and Mechanical College for Negroes, or FAMC. The following year, with an enrollment of 317 students, the college awarded its first degrees. President Nathan B. Young, who was president from 1901 to 1923, directed the growth of the college to a 4-year degree granting institution, despite limited resources, offering the Bachelor of Science degree in Education, Science, Home Economics, Agriculture, and Mechanical Arts. Also during this time, FAMU's hospital was in full swing. According to an article, quote, "When it was built in the 1920s, FAMU's hospital was the only one that treated African Americans in North Florida." Now, just think about that. Not just Tallahassee, not the surrounding community. This was the only hospital that treated Black people in North Florida. So imagine being all the way in Jacksonville, 2 hours away, or God forbid, somewhere 3-4 hours away, and you cannot get to a hospital that will treat you because of the color of your skin, and you have to drive all the way to Tallahassee because this college has a hospital that will treat you. Just think about that. And FAMU's college maintained that through the 1950s. For the city's Black population, the FAMU hospital was more than just a healthcare provider. It was the center of a community. FAMU became the first school, Black or white, to offer an accredited undergraduate nursing program in the state of Florida. These nurses, as well as the school's teachers, lawyers, and other graduates, would go on to form the foundation of the city's Black middle class. Now, under the administration of John Robert Edward Lee Sr., who was the president from 1924 to 1944, the college acquired much of the physical and academic image that it has today. More faculty were hired onto the campus, courses were being upgraded, and accreditation was received from several state agencies. By the end of his term, FAMC had 812 students and 122 staff members. That was a ton of growth at that time. And also during his administration, another great thing happened at FAMC. In 1932, the Lucy Moulton Elementary for FAMC was established as an outgrowth for the model school. The school was created specifically for students studying at the grammar school or colored normal school. Over the years, the name of the school has changed several times to include Demonstration School, Laboratory School, and FAMU High School. This is the part of the episode where I can just brag a little bit. See, Lucy Moulton was used as a research opportunity and also an opportunity for FAMC students, so those college students, to get hands-on learning in the classroom. So Lucy Moulton was an elementary school, started as an elementary school, and later on grew on to become a middle and high school for FAMU. So a lot of the idea of FAMU is for those students to transition from the high school into the university. I attended FAMU High from kindergarten through 12th grade, so I am a testament of this. I have walked the halls of Lucy Moulton School from kindergarten to 5th grade, and then in middle school, we would transition over into the middle and high school building. Now, although the school has been demolished now, I believe they tore it down last year or the year before that, Lucy Moulton still stands. So if you ever happen to be in Tallahassee and you want to see a piece of history, you can visit FAMU's campus to see the school that served as early education for Black kids in the city under segregation and also post-segregation. I am so proud to say that I attended FAMU High School. I have such a different experience from others that I didn't realize until adulthood, because I would hear people talk about not having a Black teacher until college or not having a Black teacher until high school. And my experience is just so different because all of my teachers were Black men and women. Like, we had staff of other races, yes, but for the majority, it was Black professionals working there. And that really helped mold how I show up in the world today. But let's get back to the story of FAMU. In 1949, under the guidance of William H. Gray Jr., the college obtained an Army ROTC unit and student enrollment grew to more than 2,000. But under the presidency of Dr. George W. Gore from 1950 to 1968, the Florida legislature elevated the college to university status. And in 1953, Florida A&M College became what we now know as Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. From the university's site, quote, obtaining university status meant restructuring existing programs and designing new academic offerings to meet the demands of producing quality students at the professional and graduate levels. Between 1953 and 1968, the schools of pharmacy, law, graduate studies, and nursing were created. During this time, FAMU achieved a significant first for becoming the first Negro institution to become a member of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges, or the SACSCOC. Enrollment grew to more than 3,500 and the number of faculty increased by more than 500. During the years of 1950 to 1968, the university experienced its most rapid growth. 23 buildings were erected with construction and renovation costs totaling more than $14 million. Yes, $14 million. These facilities included the Dairy Barn, faculty duplexes, the law wing of Coleman Library, Gibbs and Tucker Halls, Truth Hall, Agriculture and Home Economics buildings, which is now known as Perry Page, the Student Union Building, the Demonstration School Building and Cafeteria, the Health and Physical Education Building, the Music and Fine Arts Complex, and the high school gymnasium and stadium. So they had a lot of growth, not only in the number of faculty and the students attending the school, but also in the infrastructure. When President Dr. Benjamin L. Perry took lead at FAMU, a lot was happening. And although while you're hearing all of these great things that were happening at FAMU with the growth and expansion, there were bad things boiling under the surface. Dr. Perry became known as the savior of FAMU because under his presidency, FAMU students were under a lot of unrest as they protested within the civil rights movement. The students would sit at segregated lunch counters, and they also helped desegregate the bus system in Tallahassee. Two FAMU students, Wilhelmina Jakes and Carrie Patterson, started the bus boycott after being arrested for refusing to move to the colored section on a segregated city bus. After their arrest, FAMU students organized a campus-wide boycott of city buses, and the demonstration spread to the entire African American community in Tallahassee. The bus boycott of Tallahassee lasted from May 1956 to December of that same year, when the City Commission repealed the segregation clause beginning on January 1957. And I would just like to say that there is power in numbers. When we can all come together to say that things need to change, change happens. Now, do with that information what you will. So while President Perry has these students protesting with rightful cause, he's also dealing with the state legislature insisting that FAMU merge with Florida State University, which is that PWI that I mentioned earlier. Some lawmakers thought it would make more financial sense for the state to merge the two schools, while others questioned why there was a need for a separate institution for Black students anyway. But Dr. Perry was standing on business because he stood firmly against this merger and also the extinction of FAMU. See, Florida State, or FSU, was integrated in 1962. And because of the integration, state officials thought, well, since Black people can go to FSU now, let's just close FAMU and merge them into FSU. But they used financial reasons as their thinking behind this merger. However, the Black community knew better than that. The state's proposal ignored all of FAMU's history and accomplishments and the purpose of the school. In the 1960s came the closing of FAMU's law school, which had been established in 1949. The state of Florida defunded the school and cited financial reasons for closing the school, but only a few years later granted a law program to FSU with the funds that were for FAMU's law school. How can you close FAMU's law school for financial reasons, but then you turn around and grant the same school to FSU? Make it make sense. But not only that, 3 years later, the FAMU hospital, which had treated the city's Black residents and also, remember, Black residents of North Florida, began to face threats of closure. It lost its federal health care funding to Tallahassee Memorial Hospital, which is now integrated at this time. Facing financial hardship that it couldn't overcome, the university's hospital officially shuttered in 1971. It is said that Tallahassee Memorial Hospital chose December 24th, 1971 as the date of FAMU's hospital closure because they knew that FAMU students would not be in town to protest because it was Christmas Eve, and obviously those students would be in their respective hometowns for the holiday break. So you can kind of see a pattern here, right? The hospitals and universities were segregated, so Black people had to create their own space to care for other Black people and educate other Black people when they would be denied elsewhere. But once those places decided that it was okay to welcome Black people in, the funds that had previously gone to the Black spaces were being stripped away. This created a lot of bitterness and tension between the two schools, FAMU and FSU. And it left FAMU with very little confidence in the state government's ability to protect its interests and identity. As a Tallahassee native and also a graduate of both schools, I graduated with my bachelor's degree from FAMU and I got my master's degree from FSU. I can honestly say that the tension can still be felt to this day. Now, don't get me wrong, there were Black people, more specifically those of the rising middle class of the city, that advocated for the merging of FAMU into FSU. And I think that this is something we still see to this day in other aspects of our lives, where there are some who may not see our institutions as being good enough once they've reached a certain plateau or status in life. But Dr. Perry's administration is credited with the preservation of FAMU's autonomy because they fought and fought hard. After what is known as the 5-decade fight for FAMU, in 1971, FAMU was recognized as a full partner in the non-university public higher education system of Florida. From FAMU's site, enrollment at FAMU increased from 3,944 in 1969 to 5,024 in 1970. The university was reorganized into academic areas instead of departments. The physical plants were improved by the construction of the Women's Complex, Clifton Dyson Pharmacy Building, a new poultry building and dairy cattle resting shed, and renovation of the University Commons, Coleman Library, Tucker Hall, and the FAMU Hospital into the presently known Foot Hillier Administration Center. Over the years, and after much struggle to remain a home for creating and advancing the careers of Black professionals, FAMU has maintained its place in the world, and especially in Tallahassee, Florida. It is ranked the #1 public HBCU for the 6th consecutive year and the 81st of public universities by the U.S. News and World Report. With 98 degree programs in 14 colleges and schools, FAMU has produced many educators, lawyers, doctors, nurses, scientists, business professionals, and hey, even the producer and host of the podcast that you're listening to right now. From being founded in 1887 with that bill by Thomas Gibbs, to being placed on the land of a former plantation, to fighting to keep the university from erasure into a PWI, FAMU has proved over and over again that just like those rattlesnakes that roamed the hills of the former Highwood Plantation, there is a resilience that can be achieved by continuing to strike and strike and strike again. And like the alma mater says, FAMU, I love thee. That brings us to the end of this episode, and I hope that you share it with someone that you know, whether it be a coworker, friend, your auntie, your cousin, or maybe even a graduate of an HBCU. I hope that you remember that you too are Black history, and I'll see you in the next one.